sitting outside, but thank you for joining us to talk about happiness. And thank you to Robert. So this is our second time talking to the Tewksbury Library. So thank you for inviting us back. We had a wonderful experience the first time. We had many questions, and we hope we can have an engaging conversation at the end of our brief presentations. So these are unusual days, aren't they? We join you tonight with much of the world still in partial quarantine or full stay-at-home mode. So in the past week, there's been a lot of increased interest in the topic of happiness. It's at the forefront of people's minds as they confront both the fear of disease and a future that is completely unpredictable. And people are looking for resources. How do you cope during these challenging days and into the future when things are going to be very different? So we hope Sanjiv and I can give you some tools and resources tonight to help us all on our path. We'll talk about some of the wisdom that we garnered and shared in our book, The Two Most Important Days. Our book is both practical, it's filled with scientific data, and with specific practices, things you can do that research has shown will make people happier, and it's made us happier. And it includes storytelling and ancient and modern wisdom. So I know we don't have everyone on video, but for those who are on video, let me ask you, raise your hand if you're happy. Okay, we have some. And can I ask who here would like to be happier? Show of hands? Okay. So we know that people want to be happier. This morning on Amazon, there was a search of over 100,000 results on the topic of happiness and just as many on the topic of purpose. So why? What are the benefits of being happier? So there are some very concrete reasons that it is beneficial to be happy. So happy people radiate happiness. They create a positive feedback loop. And isn't that true? Don't you want to be around people who are happy? Doesn't that make you happier? Doesn't that make you feel good? And then your happiness resonates on others. Second, happy people have better relationships and a richer sense of community. People who are happy have more respect and honor for the interconnectedness of life. We're reading so much in the last months on depression and sadness. And why is it? Because we've lost that. We've lost our interconnectedness in so many ways. And we need to try to find that again to make others happy and to share our own happiness. And there are ways we can do it through Zoom and phone calls and email. And it's not the same, but I do urge you to reach out because these are challenging times. Interestingly, a Harvard Business School study actually said that employees are far more likely to have new ideas and good ideas on days when they're happier. So happiness is a precursor to innovation. And happy people are more creative and more productive. You know, there's this myth that misery is a muse, but actually that's not true, is it? You're more productive when you're happier. And here's the bonus, and this is at the heart of our book. Research indicates that the happier you are, the healthier you are. And this means, and this is important, you may even live longer. We know that optimists have healthier hearts. Happiness cuts coronary disease in half. And this is really important and it goes back to the interconnectedness on life. Happy people have more friends, and people with more friends have an array of health benefits, including a stronger immune system, which is something we can all benefit from right now. And it's really true. We need people in our lives to live a life of abundance. Loneliness is toxic. And a Harvard study that Sanjiv may mention if there's time will discuss that if you have satisfactory and happy relationships and love in your life at age 50, it's a better predictor of longevity than blood pressure and cholesterol. Think about that. Having people in your life will actually increase your longevity. There was another study at the University of California, San Francisco, from about 2002 that found that loneliness is a serious health risk to those over 60. And chronic loneliness leads to high blood pressure, diminished immune response, coronary artery disease, depression, insomnia, and dementia. So you can see that in isolation that we're finding ourselves in these days of COVID should prompt us to find new ways to reach out and to actually look at some of the practices that we can talk about and that are in our book, like meditation and exercise and music. But now, how do we gauge our happiness? How do you know how happy you are? Well, there's actually a formula for it. And the formula was developed by someone you may be familiar with, a team of researchers led by Martin Seligman, who is best known as the father of positive psychology. And his formula is this: happiness is equal to your set point plus your living conditions and voluntary actions. Your happiness is equal to your set point, your living conditions, and voluntary actions. So here's how it works. 50% of your happiness quotient is inherited. It's your genetic set point. Whatever happens, if something good or bad, winning the lottery, losing your job, getting a new job, having a health setback, having a joyful experience like having a baby, within 3 months, you're going to return to your set point. And there's a term for this. It's called hedonic adaptation. And it's the observed tendency of humans to quickly return to a relatively stable level of happiness despite major positive or negative events or life changes. And there are just a couple exceptions to this. One is losing a spouse, which research shows it can take as long as 5 years to return to your set point. A second exception is a lottery winner, and it's not winning the money. People who win the lottery actually return to their set point as predicted within 3 months. But if they give their money away and help other people, you can actually increase your set point. And also people who spend money on things, not on things, but on experiences, especially on experiences with others, celebrating friendships, can boost their set point. So that's 50%. 10% of your happiness quotient is dependent on satisfaction with your living conditions. And it doesn't mean you need a fancy house and a pool and indoor air conditioning. You can be just as satisfied if you're in a mansion in Beverly Hills or in the slums of Calcutta. Your potential for happiness is basically the same, but it just means, are you satisfied? It goes back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Are your basic needs met? So I know in many of our talks, we ask people if they're worried, if their set point is too low, and we find that people do worry about this. So I have good news that will cheer you up. An astounding 40% of your happiness quotient is determined by you. It's your voluntary actions, how you choose to live your life. It's under your control. And our book is about that. Our book is about those voluntary actions, how you can take practical steps to boost your genetic set point. It examines the science behind happiness and introduces us to the wisdom of people like Hafez and Gandhi and Mother Teresa and the Buddha and Rumi. And we also share poetry with you because for many people that can be a mood elevator. So at the heart of our book, and Sanjiv will talk about this, the choices you can make, is the understanding that happiness, your happiness, is a choice that you are making. And there are voluntary actions that will elevate your set point. Actions you can choose to make yourself happier. As author Rick Riordan said, we only have one life to live, but we can choose what kind of story it's going to be. We write our own story. And what's so interesting is that the ancient Greeks knew this long before we had research to support the thought. Heraclitus said, the content of your character is a choice. The content of your character is a choice. So what they're both saying is that day by day, what you choose, what you think, what you do is who you become. So you can take very conscious steps to boost your happiness quotient. And in the book, we'll provide the science, the physiological, neurochemical, and behavioral underpinnings of happiness and living a life of purpose. So I'm going to stop now and turn it over to Sanjiv, and we have so much more we could say, but I want to just tell you one, because I don't think we're going to have time for this. The fastest way to boost your happiness is smile. And there's a lot of research behind this that's in our book. So just smiling at others, and it's hard to do when you're wearing a mask, but when you're not wearing a mask, it's a definite mood elevator. Sanjiv?
Yeah, thank you so very much, Gina, for those wonderful comments. So in our book, based on the research we did and our own reflections, and talking to many of our brilliant colleagues at Harvard Medical School, but also at other major academic institutions around the country and around the world, we came to the conclusion that the happiest people on this planet have four things in common. And the first one is they have a cadre of good friends. A friend is a gift that you give to yourself. Robert Louis Stevenson said that. Khalil Gibran said, friendship is a sweet responsibility, never an opportunity. The best-selling late James Rohn, best-selling author, once said, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So choose your friends carefully and celebrate everything, big and small, with your friends. Now, Gina, I think, alluded to this study. It's called the Harvard Grant Study, the adult study on adult development. And it's gone on for almost 80 years. It's hard to fathom a study that's gone on for 8 decades. And there have been multiple principal investigators. The current principal investigator is Dr. Robert Waldinger, who's a professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School based at Mass General. And he's given a brilliant TED talk on this, what makes a good life. So what did they do? They recruited 650 21-year-olds. They were all white men, almost 80 years ago. 250 went to Harvard. The others were from poor parts of Massachusetts, Roxbury, Dorchester, and they followed them. As of last year, 19 were still alive. They were 91 years of age. And they interviewed them every year, detailed questionnaires. They did blood tests, C-reactive protein, marker of inflammation, cholesterol, blood pressure, functional MRI, and some of them, EKGs. Then they did home visits. And now a cohort of their children are being followed. Really a remarkable study. And the major conclusion, as Gina alluded to, is that loneliness is toxic. And that your satisfaction with relationships with friends, and remember, your family can be part of that circle, at age 50 is a better predictor of health, happiness, and longevity 3 decades later at age 80. So I teach the medical students, interns, residents, fellows, junior faculty. I said, I know you're busy. You got 15, 20 minutes to see a patient, follow up, complicated. But in the last 30 seconds, ask them, what do you do to celebrate with friends? And point them to this TED Talk. There's also a book written about it, The Triumph of Experience, by the previous principal investigator, George Villaert, also a professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. So that's the first one, friends. The second is the ability to forgive. Anyone listening this evening, if you're holding a grudge, our plea to you is get rid of it. Could be against an ex, could be against a boss, a neighbor, a sibling, a friend. And the moment you make that decision, you'll feel these enormous shackles come off your shoulder. The Buddha once said, resentment is like holding a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at somebody who hurt you. That person's moved on. Meanwhile, you're burning your hand. Gandhi said, the weak can never forgive. It is an attribute of the strong. It's not easy to forgive, but we can do it. You don't have to forget, but you can forgive. And to me, to us, the prime example of forgiveness is Nelson Mandela. Spent 27 years in prison, and when he's released, he's asked the question, Mr. Mandela, do you have a resentment against your captors? And he gave the most eloquent answer. He said, I have no bitterness, I have no resentment. Resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies. It'll only kill you. So that's the second trait, friends, forgiveness. The third one, we've derived from a quote by Albert Schweitzer, who was a physician, theologian, humanitarian, Nobel laureate. And he once said, I don't know what your destiny will be, but one thing I'm certain of, the ones amongst you who will be truly happy are those who have sought and found how to serve. Nurturing, mentoring, philanthropy, giving your talents, skills, time to help others. One of the best ways for us to be happy is to make others happy. So we've distilled it into 3 F's: friends, forgiveness for others. But the 4th one begins with G, the letter G, and it's not God, it's gratitude. And Gina talked about Robert Emmons, father of modern positive psychology. In that set point, where 50% is genetic, like the thermostat in the room here, 10% living conditions, 40% voluntary action, even that 50% can be boosted by exercise, behavioral cognitive therapy, meditation, but most importantly, by expressing gratitude. And Robert Emmons wrote a wonderful little paperback book. It's called Thanks. It talks about the science of happiness. And what he did was he randomized a large number of people into 2 groups. One group was asked at the end of the evening to jot down 3 random things they did during the day, and the other half to jot down 3 things they were grateful for. And at the end of 6 weeks, the group that expressed and wrote gratitude, that set point went up by an astounding 25%. So friends, forgiveness for others, 3 F's, and G, gratitude. There's a wonderful anonymous quote: if you don't speak the language of gratitude, you will never be on speaking terms with happiness. Now, here's a very simple thing you can do if you're not already doing it. Have a notebook, put your name on it, and call it your gratitude journal. And once a week, that's all it takes, 5 minutes, once a week. Maybe on a Sunday evening, as you're reflecting on what's in store for you the next week, reflect on what happened, transpired in the last 7 days. Write down what you're grateful for. We've taught this to thousands of people around the country, many of whom were in doldrums of depression, facing life's bitter challenges. And at the end of a month, they say, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm so much happier now. It wasn't necessarily the passage of time. Affirmations are also very, very powerful. Many of us do affirmations, and I think there's value to doing the affirmation in the morning. You wake up, you look in the mirror and say, today is going to be a great day. I'm going to be happy, productive, successful. It has value. But we're going to teach you an affirmation that we think is best said at night as your head hits the pillow. And there's neuroscience to back this. The brain figures out stuff to do while you're sleeping, and it consolidates memory. Amazing research about this. Incidentally, there's a wonderful new TED Talk I watched recently. It's called Sleep is the New Superpower. Sleep is the new superpower. Worth watching it, right? TED Talks are amazing, some of them, and they're free. So those 3 F's energy: friends, forgiveness for others, and gratitude. But happiness is more than the sum total of happy moments. Let me repeat that. Happiness is more than the sum total of happy moments. And in order for us to have sustained happiness, we have to find our purpose and live it. That's the wonderful quote by Mark Twain that Gina mentioned and that Robert mentioned. The 2 most important days in your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why. What's very fascinating for me right now is during the midst of this global pandemic and all the consternation, chaos, crisis we're facing, lots of people are finding meaning in their lives. They're finding purpose. From a young person in a 20-foot apartment in New York, not able to work, go to the office, she reached out to a mentor, an aunt 60 years of age, and said, what should I do? And she said, why don't you collectively in your community create a charity and help out people who may need to go shopping or need food or need medicines? And she raised $45,000 in a week, has found some purpose and meaning. That may translate into a long-term purpose. It may be just short-term, and our purpose can change. Very often, we find our purpose by witnessing something very tragic, horrific, jolting, stark, negative. But from it emerges a laser-like focus to have a dream, to make it a reality. That person has amazing fortitude, grit, compassion, and they make it a reality, and then they change the world. I was so privileged, fortunate, and blessed to meet Jaime Aramillo from the country Colombia. He's my age. I met him at a leadership course at the Kellogg School of Management some 12 years ago. And he gave a talk, and everyone was crying. And his story is that at age 28, he's standing at a street corner in Bogota, his country, Colombia. And across the street, there's a sewer. And these orphans live in the sewer. And he's thinking, I should do something about these kids. A 7-year-old girl comes out of the sewer, beautiful girl. She's looking and smiling at him. As they're having this interchange, a car comes around the corner, stops in the middle of the street. Somebody tosses a toy. The car recedes. It's a yellow school bus. She runs to the middle of the street. She's never possessed a toy. She picks it up. She's beaming with joy, looking at Jaime Aramillo, 28 years of age. And as they're having this interchange, a speeding truck comes around the corner, smashes her into oblivion. He says to himself, this is my calling in life. I'm going to adopt a house and school and feed these kids. He has now adopted, house, schooled, and fed 52,000 children. So he's a national hero, Papa Jaime. His kids have grown up to become computer scientists, professional athletes, junior national champion of tennis. Showed me a photograph, handsome young guy, flanked by Pete Sampras on one side, Agassi on the other. Nurses, lawyers, CEOs, doctors, surgeons, and many of them are giving back to his foundation. So he found his purpose in life some 40 years ago, witnessing the tragic death of that beautiful 7-year-old girl. In my talks, I often show a picture of him surrounded by these beautiful 2-year-olds, and you can see the bliss in his eyes. He's such an inspirational person. He's a mentor to me. He inspires me. An amazing guy, but he found his purpose that way. Another way is to take 33 by 5 cards. And for a month, at the end of the day, write down 3-4 things you did. And then give it a rating, where 1, you were miserable. And 10, if you're lucky, you were in bliss. And then at the end of the month, look at all of those. And you'll see 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Strike off 1 to 5. Look at 6, 7, 8, 9. That gave you happiness, right? Your purpose is lurking in there. Gina mentioned Rumi. Rumi said the wound is where the light enters you. We are collectively suffering from this worldwide wound. But there's an opportunity for us to recalibrate our lives and to find much more meaning and purpose and happiness. Albert Schweitzer, Nobel laureate, said, success is not the key to happiness. Happiness is the key to success. The ancient Greeks did not use the word happiness. They used a term called eudaimonia, which literally means human flourishing. You'll flourish in all domains of your life if you're happy. And the formula is simple. Friends, forgiveness for others, gratitude, find your purpose. It's not that complicated. Happiness is an inside job. I want to mention that just as we learned from ancient philosophers like Socrates, we consider young children to be the modern day philosophers. A 5-year-old girl, the daughter of a dean at Assumption College in Worcester. At my urging, when I give these talks, I tell the people in the audience, ask your kids, ask your grandkids to complete the sentence, happiness is. And this 5-year-old girl said, Mommy, happiness is when the heart feels bigger. A 2 years, 10-month-old son of a surgeon at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, where I gave grand rounds on this topic, we had coffee the next week and we sat down. He said, Sanjiv, my son is 2 years, 10 months. I asked him, what makes you happy? Says, Daddy, I'm most happy when I'm sharing my toys with my friends. My favorite is John Lennon, the Beatle. He goes to school at age 5, and the teacher gives the kids an assignment. Write down what you want to be when you grow up. He writes happy, and he gives it to the teacher. Teacher says, John, you didn't understand the assignment. And John looks up and he says, and you don't understand life. Pretty amazing. His mother, every night when she tucked him into bed, said, John, when you grow up, I want you to be happy. So affirmations at night are very powerful. And here's one I'm going to share with you. And I'll repeat it. You can write it. This is recorded. You can look it up later. I expand in abundance, success, happiness, and love every day, and inspire others to do the same. I expand in abundance, success, happiness, and love every day, and inspire others to do the same. The inspire others is not from a level of pomposity or arrogance. It's a duty. If we have a talent or something we can share, we should do it. Favorite quote, Voltaire, the French philosopher, he said, every man is guilty of all the good he did not do. So I'm going to stop here. There are lots of things I can talk about, Gina can talk about. Robert, you tell us whether we should say more stuff, or Gina make a comment, or should we take questions?
I just wanted to add one comment. I love Sanjiv's story about Papa Jaime, and his purpose was grand. But as all of us are in this very unusual state of COVID and trying to figure out what it means, you can find your purpose in little things. And part of happiness is resilience. And how do we stay and develop resources and tools for resilience during this period? And it can be as simple as dropping flowers off at the front door of a friend, or picking up the phone and calling someone who you know is alone and lives alone and can't go out. I have a cousin who's been sewing masks literally by the hundreds for hospitals and people in her community. So the purpose can be grand and the purpose can be small, but it all has equal meaning.
Yeah, and Gina, I'm so glad you mentioned that. In our book, Gina's purpose and my purpose is there with our names underneath, but we invited a lot of our friends to tell us what their purpose was, and we haven't listed their names. One of my dear friends, a wonderful couple, they live in Lexington, and when I asked her purpose, she said, Sanjiv, my purpose in this life is to be the best mother and grandmother for my children and grandchildren, to be a very loyal friend, and to tend my garden. Beautiful purpose. And when you go to home and you sit in the backyard and you see the garden sprouting, you can see she's happy. The flowers are happy because so much love was put in there. Gina's a wonderful gardener too.
We would love to take your questions. So we'd love to have a discussion. We'd love to have your thoughts on happiness.
So Gina and Sanjiv, we did get a question sent to me directly in the chat. Can you provide any additional examples of positive affirmations we can say at night before bed? I know you mentioned the one. Any others you can suggest?
Yeah, we can come up with innumerable ones, but stick with one or two for the time being. Write it down, put it on your night table, in your mirror, on your fridge. After the first 6-7 days, you won't even need to read it. It'll be there. One of the simplest affirmations could be, I'm super happy. I'm super happy. Thoughts can make us happy. Gina, you were saying something.
So reach for, I would write, and see, about 5 years ago when I was going through difficult times, Sandy wrote an affirmation, and it was wonderful. And I kept it on my refrigerator, and I have a copy. And so the idea of an affirmation is, think about what you wish for. What would you like your life to feel like and look like? And that really is the affirmation. It doesn't need to be, the words don't need to be fancy, but it's your hope and your wish and how you would like to interface with life.
I also want to mention that during this amazing, unprecedented time, there's certain things we should be doing. And I've actually spoken about this, and fortunately or whatever, through whatever connections, this message has now reached out to more than 300,000 people in the world. But the first thing, of course, is to say that nighttime affirmation. But when you wake up in the morning, spring out of bed. Okay, spring out of bed. Sing in the shower, stretch, come down, sip that coffee, which the first sip's most amazing aroma. In other words, what I'm saying is, have a routine. And when you come down, let's say your bedroom is upstairs, you're not allowed to come down in your pajamas. You'll be tired all day. So change into something comfortable, come down, and then spend the next 15, 20 minutes either in silence, prayer, or meditation. Sometimes people ask, what's the difference between prayer and meditation? In prayer, we are speaking to God. In meditation, God is speaking to us. So spend 15, 20 minutes, even 10 minutes. Then write down your goals. And right next to your goals, you have to have an action plan. A vision without a plan is a hallucination. And if you have 6 goals and 5 of them are easy, like send flowers to my friend, call so-and-so, it's their birthday, connect with my colleague in Seattle, I haven't talked to him for 2 months, make sure he and his wife and family are well. You can write down those 5 goals and go check, 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 and think you've done a ton of work, accomplished a lot. But the 6th goal may have been the toughest. And it could have been, you know what, start writing, start a journal. I've always been passionate about this topic. I think I'm going to write a book. Robert is an amazing librarian. I personally feel everyone has at least one book in there, one good TEDx talk, if they're passionate about something. Now, what you need to do is to spend 30 minutes on that toughest job first. Do the hard thing first, and the easy things will take care of themselves. Brian Tracy, best-selling author, wonderful book. It's called Eat That Frog. Right? Something you don't want to do, something tough. That means tackle the hard thing. It's amazing. And you can say, I'll spend 20 minutes writing or preparing a speech. Next thing, you spend 42 minutes. So have a routine, make your goals, have an action plan, tackle the first things first. 5 regrets people have in hospice. What are they? I should have traveled more. I should have spent more time with my friends. I should have been the bigger person and said, I'm sorry. I should have had the courage to pursue my dreams and aspirations. I should have said, I love you more often. This is a nurse who interviewed 1,000 people in hospice. Nobody said I should have made more money. I should have lived in a bigger mansion. I had a new Ferrari every 2 years, belonged to 4 country clubs. Point is, we need to be doing it now. Now, think of those 5 things. Right? I love you more often. We can say that. Spend more time with friends. Well, right now we do it by Zoom. Be the bigger person and say, I'm sorry. We can do that. Right? Have the courage to pursue my dreams and aspirations. We can do that. So we can do all these things. And it will transform your life if you're not doing it. It's an amazing, powerful 5 regrets in life. Let's not any of us have any of these regrets in the end days of our life.
You know, another practice, which is very small, but Sanjiv and I have a section in our book about random acts of kindness. And they're so welcome, and they are a gift to yourself as much as a gift to someone else. Periodically, a friend will leave a book or something on my porch, and it creates such joy for both of us. And I remember in Starbucks years ago, someone paid for my coffee, and the barista said every day someone came in and they paid for 3 people's coffee behind them, and they don't want anyone to know, because I said, I want to thank the person. it's years later, and I'm still remembering it and talking about it because it left such a wonderful feeling. So there are many lovely acts of generosity that are small that are just so incredibly welcome. You know, and we were talking a little bit about resilience, and I think when we talk about resilience, I think of when Sanjiv was talking earlier, we often refer to Christopher Reeve. So we are dealing with hardship, and we have all had different degrees of hardship in our life. No one is exempt from that at all. You know, we have loss in many different forms. And Christopher Reeve, as you know, had a beautiful life. He was a beautiful person. He had a beautiful family. He was a movie star. He was successful. And through a tragic accident, he became a paraplegic. But Christopher Reeve died happy. He created a foundation to give back to others, for those who had experienced spinal cord injuries. And when he died, before he died, he said, and I think this is one of the most powerful quotes I've ever read because it shows how anyone can overcome adversity, is, "I'm not living the life I thought I would lead, but it does have meaning. It has purpose. There is love, there is joy, there is laughter." And I think about one of my favorite quotes that I discovered from Camus in my 20s when I read The Plague, which is, "I have within me, in the midst of winter, I found within myself an invincible summer." And that's what we reach for, all of us, is that invincible summer that lies with each of us.
We have another question from the chat. It's hard to find the time to meditate. Sometimes I try right before I fall asleep. Do you get any benefit if you fall asleep at night in the middle of meditating?
Yes, you do. You'll probably have a sounder sleep. But the reason we meditate is, even though the experience might be very blissful and it varies, and we shouldn't judge our meditation, the reason we meditate is to accrue the benefits in activity. Therefore, meditation should be done ideally in the morning, and then you charge into the day. And then around 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, I did 20 minutes meditation around 5:30 today. And then the whole evening opens up. And there's a wonderful ancient saying, you should meditate once a day. And if you don't have time to do that, you should meditate twice a day. Then you really need it. So it's easy. It's not a religion. Here's a very simple thing that you can do if you're feeling a little stressed. And this was taught to me by my then 7-year-old granddaughter in New York. She's now 13, Mira. She said, "Nana," which means maternal grandfather, "you know, my teacher has a master's in mindfulness." I said, "Wow, this is New York. It's a private school." And she's taught us 5 things. I'm not going to mention the 5 things, but one of them was, she said, if you're feeling a little anxious, close your eyes and pretend you're sniffing some beautiful flowers through your nostrils. Breathe in, smell the flowers. Breathe out through your mouth, blow the candle. Try it. 2 minutes. Just do it a few times. Breathe in, smell the flowers. Breathe out, blow the candle. You'll suddenly feel settled, calmer, more tranquil, more peaceful. It's the breath of life. Breathing is one of the most, breath is the most vital force.
So do we have any other questions for Sanjiv or Gina? And if folks want to ask a question via video, they can just raise their hand. We do, you probably get this a lot, Sanjiv. We have a fan of your brother in the chat, so.
Okay, good, yeah. Yeah. I'm a fan of his too.
Yeah.
We're all fans of his.
He's 3 years old. We had the most
I have
amazing
another
child.
comment. Wondering, so we have someone in the chat who works with senior citizens, and she feels very worried about them being isolated during this time. Any thoughts or recommendations on how to cheer up seniors who may be isolated right now?
Yeah, I think the friends and children of that senior can arrange with the nurses and staff at the senior living, whether it's independent or assisted, to talk to them on the phone and just cheer them up. Tell a story, bring up a story about mom or grandmother. Remember 30 years ago, we all went to Disneyland and we had the best time. Cheer them up, connect with them. Social fabric, connectedness. One of my friends, he's brilliant. He's an innovator, artificial intelligence. There's a company that's developed a robot. I think it's called Ava. And they're doing a trial at the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. The robot can walk into the room. And the son in Kansas City can talk to his father. And he can see, and they can talk and see each other. And then it comes out, goes to the other room. I mean, right now, if a relative of mine is admitted to the ICU, I can't even go visit a friend or relative. So people are coming up with brilliant, innovative ways, but connect with them by phone, talk to the nurses or the staff. They will say, 3 o'clock is a good time. She usually takes a nap between 1 and 2:45. Then she has tea, and that'll be a perfect time. Why don't you call me and I'll connect you? So we do need to connect. We absolutely need to connect.
And I think in addition, I think this is true not only in this period of COVID, but always when you're talking to people who are elderly, as much as we want to tell them stories, ask them about their life, because there is so much wisdom. All of us know this as we age. There's so much wisdom and so many stories. What was it like to live through the Depression? What was it like to live through the 60s? What were your experiences? What was it like when you first fell in love? And I think people don't have that opportunity as they get older to tell their story. And I think it's one of the most joyful things to do. And if you have relatives who are elderly, interview them on it with your phone on a recorder and get their oral history and have them tell you about their life. I guarantee that will give more joy than anything else, is to give them that opportunity.
There was some research done by a brilliant Harvard faculty person where they took people who had early Alzheimer's, dementia. And what they did was recreate the room. So everything in the room looked like it was in the 60s. And they saw movies and they listened to music. These people flourished, their faces lit up, their memories improved. It's pretty remarkable. So there are ways of connecting in a creative way. And if grandma has a favorite song or a favorite movie, talk about it. Record a song from that movie and let the nurse play it for her. Simple things we can do.
Excellent, excellent. I don't see any other questions in the chat. I will just say that.
Robert, I was going to say, before
Gina.
we close, I want to close with a poem before we close out the session.
Go for it.
I'll close with a quote I made up half an hour ago. No, 2 hours.
Okay, because we have 10 poems in our book, and I love poetry. So I thought this one's a little upbeat and joyful, and it's by Carrie Newcomer, who is a folk singer, and I met her actually at Club Pisceum in Cambridge. And I said, Sanjiv and I were writing the book, and I said, that poem you read, because she reads poems and sings folk songs, was so wonderful. And through a long, complicated process, I was able to get permission to include it in the book. But it's called The Three Gratitudes. And it's really on this topic of affirmations and what you say and think about when you're going to sleep at night. Three Gratitudes by Carrie Newcomer. Every night before I go to sleep, I say out loud 3 things I'm grateful for. All the significant, insignificant, extraordinary, ordinary stuff of my life. It's a small practice and humble. And yet I find I sleep better holding what lightens and softens my life ever so briefly at the end of the day. Sunlight and blueberries, good dogs and wool socks, a fine rain, a good friend, fresh basil and wild phlox, my father's good health, my daughter's new job, the song that always makes me cry, always at the same part, no matter how many times I hear it, decent coffee at the airport, and your quiet breathing. The stories you told me, the frost patterns on the windows, the English horns and banjos with thrush and June bugs, the smooth, glassy calm of the morning pond, an old coat, a new poem, my library card, and that my car keeps running despite all the miles. And after three things, more often than not, I get on a roll and I just keep on going. I keep naming and listing until I lie grinning, blankets pulled up to my chin, awash with wonder at the sweetness of it all.
Beautiful poem.
Yeah.
So I'm going to end with something I posted on Facebook earlier today. And it says, may the next phase of our lives be one of majestic and ebullient transformation. May the next phase of our lives be one of majestic and ebullient transformation. What a blessing that would be. What a blessing that would be. It's in our power. We can do it.
Thank you both so much. I feel like I learned so much in 50 minutes, and I have so many notes and quotes, and a vision without a plan is a hallucination. I think I'll remember that one till the day I die.
Who said that, Robert?
Yeah.
Will Rogers. That's from Will Rogers.
Will Rogers, all right. But friends, forgiveness for others, and gratitude. I think I'm going to put that into practice starting tonight. So thank you both so much. Thank you all for coming. I am going to unmute us all. And on 3, we can all